Hello and welcome to the series on Microsoft 365. In this video, we'll be looking at Self-Service Password Reset, or SSPR for short. I have the Microsoft documentation on the screen, and I will include this link in the video description. As usual, I always encourage you to view the documentation, as Microsoft often makes changes to the environment, so if you're implementing a new feature, it's important to have the latest information. So self-service password reset is basically what it says. It allows the users to reset their passwords themselves. So instead of having to involve a system administrator, the users can select when and how they reset their password. The benefit of this is that it reduces the effort from your administrators, and it also gives the users freedom and flexibility. If we scroll down, you can see over here Microsoft have listed some key benefits. One being cost, so you reduce the effort on your administrators. They don't need to focus on resetting passwords. They can focus on other areas. If you worked in a large IT environment, a lot of the requests that come through are often to reset passwords, as it's common for the users to forget their passwords. It gives the users an intuitive user experience. It gives them flexibility and security. So flexibility in being able to change their passwords when they want to, and security in that they can change their passwords when they need to. So if a password has been compromised, a user can change it immediately. They don't need to contact their system administrator. And lastly, they list robust audit and usage tracking. So every time a user resets their password, this will be logged to the audit log, and you can review this information and see how often a user is resetting their password or which users are resetting their password. If we look at licensing and prerequisites, there's no real prerequisites for this other than you have to have your tenant set up. They do mention you can create a free tenant and use this for testing. I do have a video on how to set up a free tenant with the Microsoft Developer Network. I would suggest that you check it out, that you can view the process, or otherwise you can click on the link here and Microsoft will walk you through the same process. By default, SSPR is not enabled. To enable it, you need to be a global administrator. I'll be showing you that in a minute, how we can walk through the process of enabling it and configuring it. You can see they've got a diagram of the user flow, and they also mention over here enable a combination of registration for SSPR and MFA. I haven't yet done a video on MFA, but I'll be doing it in a later video. When you have to enable MFA, you have to define your devices and also your authentication method, either using email, SMS, or a authenticator app. So instead of having the users going through this process both for MFA and SSPR, you can combine the process, and they have some information on how to do that. If we go down, you can see they've also got authentication methods. I mentioned you can, for MFA, you have different authentication methods such as SMS, email. You can also enable different questions. So how many questions you need to log in. If you enable 2 questions, so for example, what's your favorite color and what's your mother's maiden name, then if the user gets that right after entering their password, they will be redirected to the environment. So you can also set up the authentication methods and also the registration settings, but I'll show you that in the portal. So if we go over to portal.azure.com, you can see this is your default portal setting. If you don't have Azure Active Directory listed in your Azure services, you can always search for it, or you can click on View Information over here under Azure Active Directory. Before we enable the self-service password reset, I would like to just show you, if we go over to users. I don't have that many users in my environment, but if we select a user, we can always reset the password. So if a manual reset would have to be done in this way, where you reset it for a specific user. But if you enable the SSPR, the users can do this themselves. So let's just go back to the home page of the portal.azure.com. and we can go to Azure Active Directory. We can go back to users, and you can see under all users we have an option here for password reset. If we click on the password reset, you can see by default it's disabled. You can either enable it for a selected group or selected users, and you can specify the users of the group, or you can enable it for all users on your tenant. So I'm going to enable this for all users on my tenant, and if I click save, it will save this my selection. So now when a user logs on, they will be requested to set up their authentication method, and when they want to reset their password, they will be able to do this themselves. So I mentioned authentication method. This is the same as with MFA, or similar to with MFA. If you want to use this service, you have to select authentication method. So if you click on the authentication method, by default they have one selected. So this can either be email or mobile phone. So to authenticate, the user needs to enter their email address or their mobile phone. You can say that you need the number of methods that you need needs to be 2. I'll leave it on the default, and you can also enable different authentication methods. So for example, a mobile application, you can see over here there's some more information on where you can download the mobile app and how the users can access the mobile app. And I do not really like security questions, but if you wanted to enable security questions, you could also enable the security questions. So for example, the number of questions required to register. So before the user registers for SSPR, they need to answer five questions, and the number of questions required to reset your password. So if a user wants to reset their password, they would need to enter 3 questions of the questions that they've registered. So you can see over here, I've got a red message over here. It says no security questions are configured. If we click on that, you can see over here you've got a list of predefined security questions. If you click on it, in what city did you meet your first spouse, partner? In what city did your partner parents meet? Blah 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 blah. There's a lot of information options that you can select here. You could select a certain number of them, or you could select all of them, but you can also create custom questions if you wanted. As I mentioned, I do not really like this feature, so I'm going to disable it, but feel free to enable it on your tenant and configure it how you want to. So for my tenant, I will enable mobile app code, email, and mobile phone. So let's click on save. And that is the process of enabling password reset. So now this is enabled on my tenant for all users.